Hello, welcome. I will be your host, Noah Salam, on today's podcast entitled Resilience and Resource Scarcity. On March 20th, 2025, the Trump administration issued an executive order calling for the dismantling of the Education Department. In the East Room of the White House, surrounded by school children, President Trump signed this order, calling for the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, to begin dismantling her own department. A federal agency that has operated for over 4 decades, the Education Department manages everything from student loans to civil rights. For another educator's perspective, I spoke with Assistant Professor Catherine Wiley to hear her opinion on these matters and what implications she believes the Trump administration's decisions could mean for the future.
The Trump administration, through education and workforce and the Department of Justice, is trying to re-articulate civil rights interpretation. That is something that I think is going to have it's going to be a long fight to get back where civil rights law and interpretation was.
A federal agency that has operated for over 4 decades, the Education Department manages everything from student loans to civil rights. For some perspective into the matter, I spoke with Howard University media, journalism, film, and communications professor Ingrid Sturgis for her insights on how these changes may affect HBCUs specifically.
The education budget really is a local budget, and the Department of Education funds a small portion of local budgets. Now, if you're talking about how it's going to impact HBCUs, right now we don't know. We don't know how anything is going to impact us. We know that he's cut the budget for a number of universities, but so far the administration has not impacted HBCUs in the same way, meaning some of the funding that he's rescinded have come from research and the Department of the NSF, the NEH, and the NIH. And so some of that funding has been pulled from some of the schools as well as some other federal funding. And that impacts some people who do research on HBCU campuses. But for the most part, we haven't experienced the large impact that some of the Ivy League schools have so far.
We're going to shut it down, and shut it down as quickly as possible, the president declared. President Trump's administration has managed to cut the Education Department staff by more than half since his inauguration, taking a particularly large hit at the Office for Civil Rights in the department. For some historical context, the Department of Education was created by an act of Congress, and according to Article 1 of the Constitution, only Congress can eliminate it. This is the only reason why no president in modern times has attempted to unilaterally close a federal department before. Regardless of these constructs, the Trump administration has already reduced the department's workforce by over half and has cut upwards of $600 million in grants since January. Many conservatives are on board with Trump wanting to shut down the agency, thus putting Republican lawmakers in a tough spot. They're trying to keep Trump happy while also listening to what other voters want. On the other hand, polls from the last couple of months show that almost 2/3 of people don't want the department to be closed.
What they're trying to do to reinterpret civil rights law is going to be, I think, one of the longest. That's going to be, I think, a huge fight. And civil rights law, our lawyers at Howard, birthed so much of the civil rights law that we have, and so I think that's also where the Howard community, the legal scholars here, are going to be involved in that fight to oppose what's happening right now in the courts, but also in the future to restore and strengthen civil rights laws in this country.
We know that some of the research funding has been eliminated, and so we don't know how that's going to impact what people research, how they research. So a lot of right now is just the unknowns that we can't figure out how it's going to turn out. And I think for a lot of us, not knowing how things are going to turn out is probably the most worrisome part, because it's hard to plan if you don't know what's going to happen.
Regardless of these constructs, the Trump administration has already reduced the department's workforce by over half and cut upwards of $600 million in grants since January.
A lot of programs that that do provide support bridge programs for high schoolers. Those are funded through discretionary grants in the federal government, and those grants are basically being challenged, eliminated. They're being reviewed and cut for any quote unquote reason for diversity, and those are going to impact. They're going to impact us. They're going to impact our students. They're going to impact the availability of bridge programs for Black and Brown students into higher education. So the programmatic component and the funding component are both going to impact our students. So the impacts are already broad. Faculty members in our departments have lost research grant funding. They're going to lose their graduate students, and their graduate students are going to lose those funds to pay for to offset tuition costs and things like that. So the money, it's right now the Trump administration has not directly targeted HBCUs, but the funding cuts that are happening, they don't even have to do it directly because it's through that money that it is happening.
It affects me personally because I'm worried. I'm worried about what's going to happen to some of the families of my students. I'm worried about what could potentially happen to the university. I'm also worried about what could potentially happen to, the surrounding areas. I live in PG County, so how all of these changes are going to impact us. Um, the real thing is, I guess the attack on DEI is really worrisome. However, the right to get a good job and to get an education is a right that's in the Constitution. And so while some of these things may seem unconstitutional, and I think in the end, what's going to happen is the laws will prevail. We'll be able to speak out loud about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll be able to speak out loud about Black issues. I think right now we're all feeling like we can't say these things, but we have a First Amendment right. We have a right to say them. We have a right to discuss them. As a matter of fact, the right to discuss them is the thing that makes us a really great country, as well as it's the thing that helped us to get where we are. And so while it seems that those things are being attacked right now, I think in the long run, people are going to speak out. People are going to exercise their First Amendment right to assemble, to speak, to protest.
This has been Resilience in Resource Scarcity. As we continue to navigate the ongoing challenges facing our nation's education system at this time, it's clear that the fight for equitable funding and access is far from over. We've heard the concerns, the warnings, and the call to action. Education is more than policy. It's people, communities, and futures at stake. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and never underestimate the power of your voice. Signing off, this is Noah Salam.